Olá, sejam todos muito bem-vindos, muito bem-vindas. Queremos agradecer em nome da comunidade Shalom e do IBI, do Brasil-Israel, pela sua participação neste domingo à tarde. Estamos nas vésperas das eleições em Israel, a quarta consecutiva, que vai acontecer na próxima terça-feira, dia 23, e temos o privilégio, a honra, o prazer de poder, daqui a pouquinho, falar com Dan Shadur. Dan Shadur é o diretor do filme maravilhoso chamado King Bibi, Melech Bibi, que conta, vocês já viram, quem não viu pode assistir, a história do surgimento na política, faz 4 décadas, de Benjamin Netanyahu, que há 12 anos é o primeiro-ministro de Israel, mais longevo da história, há 15 anos na política, e Dan é um dos jovens talentos, um documentarista que fez um filme maravilhoso. Esse filme ganhou prêmios em vários festivais de cinema. E eu acho que um pouco explicou que é uma visão fascinante da evolução da mídia do primeiro-ministro israelense Benjamin Netanyahu. Ele já teve outros filmes, como Before the Revolution, que conta a história antes da Revolução no Irã. E é vocês vão ver daqui a pouquinho essa oportunidade de conhecer dele mesmo direto que acontece. E Netanyahu, de alguma maneira, foi um pouco de pioneiro nessa história. Hoje, 8 partidos políticos têm consultores políticos norte-americanos. Ele começou a história muito tempo atrás, antes de ser político, e por isso que é muito importante, tanto para o IBI e para Shalom, conhecer essa história. Então, queremos agradecer a cada um de vocês que nos acompanha, agradecer muito a Anitta, que vai ser nossa jornalista, que vai entrevistar a Dan Shadur. Temos 2 canais de YouTube, um que vai ser em inglês, este aqui, e outro que vai ser em português, separado, para cada um escolher. And thank you, Dan, for being with us. Thank you, Anita. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity to know more about your wonderful film.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adrian, for this introduction. I wish every talk I do will have an introduction in Portuguese.
That is really, really nice to be here with you. I really enjoyed your movie. It's really fascinating to understand how Bibi turned to be this Bibi we know today. And my first question to you is about the name of your documentary. Some Jews, they used to say that Israel is Middle East's only democracy. Lots of Jews love to say that. But a king is the central figure of a monarchy. So why did you choose King Bibi as the name of your documentary?
So first of all, thank you, Adrian, and everyone for hosting me, and thank you, Anita, for doing this talk. It's a great privilege to talk to you guys. I never been to Sao Paulo. This is the closest I'm getting so far. So thank you. Regarding the name is taken from a Time magazine cover from 2012 that stated King Bibi. This was like a certain point in time where you understand that Bibi is turning into something else, which is not just another prime minister, not just another leader. And the name was at first temporarily, but then we decided to go for it. I think the name is ambiguous. I think it has 2 meanings. Some people who listen to it thinks it's derogatory, thinks it's going against Bibi, and some people say that it praises him. And I think both answers are correct. Bibi is regarded as king by many Israeli, and when you tell me that we have a king, I'm saying, no way, this is really bad. We don't want a king. I don't want a king as a ruler. But other people think otherwise, and other people are happy to have someone who is like a king to rule over them. So the name is. I think it reflects something about the film in general, that it has a few meanings, that you can read it in a few meanings, and it really depends on where you come from. I'm not here to convince people to think this way or another way. I wanted to make this film available to many people, and the name is part of it.
And I think that a very powerful scene is when some supporters, they are singing Bibi Melech Israel. So I think it's very meaningful. And do you know if Bibi saw the documentary? What were the public and private reactions on your movie?
So yeah, he did see the documentary. He saw it a few months after it was published. There was a lot of the film was first shown in the Jerusalem Film Festival in the summer of 2018, but it started showing in cinemas and on cable TV at the beginning of 2019. And there was a lot of noise around the documentary, so Bibi did react to it. He watched it on a flight on the way to Chad in Africa. And he said, and there was a reporter on the plane that took his reaction, and he said that it was an interesting documentary, that he fell asleep in the middle, but not because it's not a good film, but because he was very tired. He said that he only met Lillian Wilder, the speech instructor that we bring the tapes from her in the film, that he only met her once or twice, and she told him to always say the truth. And he said that it's not true that, like the film shows, that he controls the people through witchcraft and magic, but thanks to his economic genius that turned Israel from a backward socialist country to an advanced and modern free market economy. So it was a typical Bibi reaction. It was both humiliating, both respecting, both there was a few lies there, a few exaggerations, but it was interesting to get his reaction generally, because it told us something about the effect of the documentary. The film, after it was broadcast on cable TV, it was broadcast again on the one of the networks in Israel. And then Bibi reacted again. He tweeted. He said that it's strange that the creators of King Bibi did not show the scenes before Rabin was assassinated, that he says that Rabin is not a traitor. So these were his reactions to the film.
We'll get to this Rabin part, that for me it's like one of the most important things of the movie. But before that, I would like to know if you tried to talk to Bibi and if he answered you, or if he didn't want to answer.
While making the film?
Yeah.
We approached the Prime Minister's office a few months, like when we were towards the end of the film, and asked for an interview. We did not get a reaction. The whole idea of the concept of the documentary was that we made it really under the radar. So nobody knew we were making it. Nobody and nobody, before I made the film, not many people knew me. So it wasn't like, we really worked under the radar, which was great, because there was no pressure. There was no we could do, we were free from both sides to do whatever we liked. We did ask for the interview. After the film was done, I asked again for an interview. I offered to make another film with the interview with him, but it didn't happen. I mean, he didn't. He's not ready to talk, to really talk, freely.
This is actually, I study these things. I'm in a master's of political communication, and this is a way of this kind of politics communicating. Like, they do not communicate in a way that people can confront him. So this is a very common strategy with Trump, Bibi, Bolsonaro, and all this kind of politics.
Yeah, this was, it's about control. And this was the idea of making the film. I said, okay, he's not going to talk to me. He's not talking to anyone. Let's take everything that he said and create another narrative, create a narrative that we can reflect on these things, give some power back to the spectator from his manipulation. That was the whole idea of the film, and I guess that's why he wouldn't talk to me.
And how was this experience of making a movie with like public domain material without the participation of the main characters. What was the most interesting part of this process, and what was the most difficult part?
Everything was difficult. It was a very difficult task from beginning, starting from getting the finance for the film. When we first came to the broadcasters, they said, why would we want to see Bibi for 90 minutes? We see him all the time in the news. We don't want to see him anymore. So we needed to convince them that the documentary will bring something new to the discussion. Then there was the part of gathering all the footage. I was guessing that there will be some interesting footage that we don't know, that is going back to the phase before Bibi became Bibi, where you see him practicing, you see him faltering, you see him not succeeding, not doing it as great as he's doing it today. But it was a guess. I didn't know where and how I would find it. So it was a lot of footwork going to. I think I've been to like 40 different archives in Israel and in the US and in Europe, trying to find these tapes. And then we found a few parts that were more revealing and more interesting. And then the editing, usually when you come to edit a documentary, you have interviews, or you have scenes, or you have some form to tell the story. And here we didn't have anything. It was like building everything from scratch. But I think the most difficult thing, and then editing, like, again, there's so many options, there's so many things you can do, and you need to make a lot of decisions. But I think the most difficult part for me was for someone who comes from the liberal left, who grew up in a home and in an environment that is pretty much anti-Bibi. That I before making and releasing the film, I hardly knew anyone who was voting for him. The most difficult part was making him an empathic figure, because as a filmmaker, it's not interesting for me to come and say, oh, he's a bad guy, he's a liar, he's a manipulator. And this is how the first drafts of the film were like that. Okay, let's start, Bibi, this is what it is. So I think one of the most difficult things was to shift and to make him what I think is, for the first half of the film, a more relatable figure, a more likable figure, and even for people who don't like him. So this was like one of the biggest challenges.
And my next question was about this challenge. What's your intention to make like an unbiased movie? And do you think this is even possible?
No, it's not possible to make an end. I mean, you make a film and you tell your story and you tell it the way.
Because there's something about you in that movie, no? Like you grew up in a left-wing house with liberal convictions.
So that's what drove me into the story. I said, okay, I never voted for him. I don't know anybody who's voting for him, and he's keep getting reelected. So this is not. I think a lot of people from my environment, for quite a few years, regarded it as a mistake. Okay, he was elected, but it was a mistake. He'll go away, and we'll continue our life or our fantasy as a liberal state. And this did not happen for many years. So I wanted to really understand. I wanted to know, to get out of my surrounding and know more about the other side, understand Netanyahu himself, and understand better his voters. And I think my approach, the whole idea of not interviewing anyone, helped it, because we mainly let the men talk. But of course, we make many decisions, and for many Bibi supporters and for Netanyahu himself, he didn't say that in his reaction for the film, but I learned about it later. The idea that I'm not portraying him as a great leader, as a great statesmanship, but more of a manipulator and more of a marketing genius, they didn't like it. And on the other hand, people from the left also had problems with the film. So you cannot make an unbiased documentary or any film. And if you do, I think it's not interesting, because you need a point of view. But I think my approach, and this is personal because this is how I like to think about things in general. does leave quite a bit of space for the spectator. And in the environment, in the Israeli discourse, the conversation about Netanyahu and politics in general is very toxic. It's very polarized, and I think the film brings something different, and I'm happy about it.
And I think it helps in a process to understand that even if you do not like him, he is a great politician. He's one of the biggest politicians in our world today. I think you agree with that, no?
Yes, I have to agree. And after making the film, I'm more convinced in it. Yeah, he sees a few steps ahead. He's very, very intelligent. He's very knowledgeable as well. But I think most importantly, he wants it more than anyone else, and he will always want it more than anyone else. And he will always have a personal surrounding. His family will always push him in a way that it's hard to imagine people with such desire for power.
And we are living a time of understanding this new right wing, this new populism. We have some examples, like I said before, in the world, like Donald
you
Trump.
Have a good example.
Yeah, and Trump and Bolsonaro. Do you believe we can say that Bibi was a pioneer in this field?
Yes, this was one of my biggest revelations while working on the film, is seeing working on his first term when he was elected in 96 until 99, discovering how many of the methods we see today by him, but for many other leaders, were already invented by him in the 90s, or that he understood it from in the 90s. Even he didn't even understand it wholly, like he understood the beginning of it. In the 90s, Bibi is still his right wing, and he represents some groups that are not in power, but he tries to be like more like the prime minister of everyone. It's not like today, but still, I mean, the rally that you mentioned earlier with Bibi Melech Israel. So you see the signs, the people holding signs against the media, against the leftist media. So this really looks like Trump rallies from 2015, 2016.
And we thought it was something new. And Bibi looked at us and laughed. No, this is not new. I've been doing that a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And the video when he launches the website of the prime minister's office, and he says, it's amazing because he puts on it, like he shoots a video, and you have no streaming at the time. I still don't understand what the video was for, because you couldn't see videos in the internet at the time. But his text there is quite remarkable, because he says, "This is me talking to you. You don't need any commentators. You don't need anyone to tell you what to think. You can get your information from me." So this is like 20 years before social media becomes a tool in politics. Of course, he doesn't think about social media, but he understands where things are going. So I think it's him and Berlusconi at the time in Italy are kind of pioneering these populist methods. Of course, you can relate to Reagan as well in that aspect, but they bring something new. And Bibi especially, and the way he evolves, the way he understands the different needs, the way he uses social media today. It's pretty. I mean, for me, it's scary, but it's pretty remarkable. And you talk to people who work with him, and they tell you that he does everything in one take, like a good actor. Like he never needs to think too much about what he's doing. He's preparing himself for TV. He needs like one take, and he gets the text. He understands editing. But the populist aspect of it is pretty amazing to see how he's doing it from already in the 90s.
Yes, I don't know if you know this, but President Jair Bolsonaro, every week, once a week, he does a live broadcast in Facebook, and like the next day or in the same day, all news are about the things he is saying that broadcast, and like the media do not have the space to ask questions. It's just him talking what he believes and what he is clearly, and you do not have the space. And I think Bibi is doing that like a long time. He's been doing this, and there's no space for questions. There's no space for making or to say you're lying or something like this.
Yeah, they create the discourse. They know how to, and when you have this kind of discourse, this is another thing that I wanted to show, is that the media is to blame as well, because the media is looking for this kind of discourse. The media for many years is not asking, is not they're supposed to be liberal and leftist, but they're actually, it's all about ratings, and it's all about creating this drama. So so it's kind of they're kind of handing them this
because the
this
media
situation.
needs the audience to survive.
Yes, the media needs the audience, and the media is a slave of the audience. Yes, the media is not a
And this is very contradictory, because you think, okay, I need the audience, but do I really want to give this kind of people space? And I don't know, this is a very tough question. We have a question. Rafael Cruchin is asking, what's the most important message you expect people to get after watching your documentary?
It's a tough question. I don't really believe in messages of in filmmaking. I hope people will ask themselves this kind of question that we're talking about now. I mean, who creates reality? Why is it created in such a way? Who controls it, and who benefits it? And how can we look at our reality in a different way and get back a little bit of the power that is being taken from us on such a constant basis by our politicians and by our the populist media. So I guess this is what I'd like people to think about. But also, it's also entertainment, and it's also just to know the story, because a lot of people don't know it, and then you can think for yourself what you want to take from it.
And then I would like to ask you about two people that are in this political path of Netanyahu. The first one is Sarah Netanyahu, Bibi's third wife. So what was her importance in his political path?
I think she is very important. I was researching and exploring, and I learned a little bit about his two first wives. So Sarah Netanyahu is Bibi's third wife, and the two first ones were very, very different from her. They were very much more I don't know if shy, but they had their own life, their own careers. They were very intelligent and educated women. I'm not saying Sarah is not intelligent, but I think the drive that she brings into this relationship, the feeling that Netanyahu must remain in power, that he's the only one who can lead Israel, and this kind of narcissistic thinking about the world, it's something that is it's a big drive for him. I think it's a big drive in this relationship. I think most women who will be in such a partnership at some stage will say, that's enough. I don't want this anymore. Like, I don't want this. I mean, okay, we did it for 5, we did it for 10 years. Like, I wanna have my life back. And I think her personal life and are so intertwined in the public life that she drives Bibi forward and gives him the support that he needs to never give up and always want to stay.
And she was exposed like lots of times. She went through hell with the media and the scandals. It was difficult for her, don't you think?
Yes, but she was also looking for it. I mean, she was also like she's suffering. They always say how much she's suffering. It's I mean, it's true. I mean, I wouldn't like to be in her position, but again, like I show in the film, I mean, she's married to a man who, while she was with the baby, who was a few months old, went live on TV, confessed about his adultery. I mean, this is a crazy situation. This is not something you can, it's not like normal people who does these things. So they're really together. I don't like the thought that, you know, people say that she's crazy and that she's at fault for that, like she's to blame for this situation. I don't like this thing. I mean, I mean, there are question marks about her mental stability, but you know, he's a grown man. He's responsible for what he's doing, and he is the one who's being elected. So yeah.
We have some comments before I ask you about the other person, but Jacques Griffel said that he loved your movie, so he was very interested in it. And Micheline Alves said that it's very difficult to make an unbiased documentary, but she really liked the option of making a documentary based on public images, and she thought that it led the documentary very objective. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And the other, before I make more questions of the public, I would like you to say something about Arthur Finkelstein, because we live in a time that we talk a lot about Olavo de Carvalho, who is like Bolsonaro's inspiration, and also about Steve Bannon, who's Trump's inspiration, like the guys that are behind these victories. And Arthur Finkelstein was there the same to Bibi. He was the great mind behind some of the most important victories Bibi had. So what do you think about him and what's his importance?
He's very important, but then again, Bibi is more important because Bibi knows it's about the American side of Netanyahu, which is another thing that drove me into this story, that really intrigued me from the beginning, because you know, we had a general understanding that Netanyahu spent a lot of time in the US, but only when I started working on the film, I realized that he's actually an American in many, many, many ways. He spent half of his life in the US until he was 40. And actually, his father, Bibi's father, Benzio Netanyahu, in an interview to Haaretz newspaper in 1999, says that one of Bibi's problems that is Hebrew is not as good as his English. He's saying that about his son, who is the prime minister of Israel. So when Netanyahu joins Israeli politics, it's after he was educated in the US, he really brings this kind of professionalism and this kind of thinking about politics to Israel. And Finkelstein is part of it. Israeli prime ministers had American advisors before, but nobody gave them so much power like Netanyahu gives Finkelstein. And Finkelstein, I don't know about the Bolsonaro advisor, but Steve Bannon, well, he was more in the front. Finkelstein was not so much in the front. But he definitely brought him a few understandings that still go with him today. The idea of a negative campaign, the idea of relying on polls, like heavily understanding polls all the time, and communicating with what people want to hear, and understanding it in a deep way. So yeah, I think he was a very important figure for him, definitely.
And so Luis Eduardo Fonseca says, I like your point on the media. It has to move to new forms of interaction between different ideas. And Monica Fagundes says, the whole story of Bibi is very interesting. The way it is presented in the documentary is fascinating. How was the reaction of the Israeli public and the specialized critics on the documentary?
It was an interesting reaction. I really didn't know what to expect. You sit alone, not alone, but with a few people in a dark room for a few years, and you work on it. You don't know what's going to happen outside, if anybody's going to notice it at all. I think because of the unbiased approach, the documentary kind of it's fortunately for us, it kind of got out of the documentary ghetto. I mean, usually when you make a documentary, even if it's going to a lot of festivals,
it became something more mainstream.
Yeah, it's not only mainstream. It's like, yeah, it brought people to the to this documentary channel. That's what I learned later. It brought people that were never there before. And it managed to communicate with both sides of the political spectrum. There was one screening just when the film was out in the cinema that I went for a talk. And when the screening was finished, and I went on stage, and one guy raised his hand and he said, "This is a failure for you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "I'm a Bibi supporter. My son brought me here. I was expecting to see something that will be against Bibi and show him as a liar. And now I support Bibi even more. I really, I think, I think he's good." And before he finished the sentence, one woman from the back of the cinema started shouting, "Are you crazy? Can't you see from the film that this guy is a psychopath? Can't you see that he's ruining Israel?
It's a sign of success then."
So that was like the example of how the film was accepted. Like a lot of people saw it from their perspective, and also the people who didn't like the film. It's kind of both from left and from right. So the people from the right who didn't like the film, and I think in a way Netanyahu himself was saying, "How come you portray him like a manipulator? How come you portray him as a marketing genius? He's a real important leader with a lot of content, who's doing ideological things for Israel." And the people from the left had like a similar approach to saying, "How come you just show him as a professional politician? How come you don't show him how he's ruining Israel? How is the devil? How is the Satan that is bringing us down?" So there was a lot of interesting reaction, and I think maybe one of the more interesting reactions for me was actually from people from the left, including politicians and member of parliament who came to me and said it was like for us to learn the enemy, like because it wasn't just saying the thing that we always say about him, but giving him some respect and showing him his good sides as well. It was relevant. It was something new for us. Like we feel like we're understanding it a little bit better now, and we know how to. I don't know what you can do with this.
We're going to talk of the elections that are coming in a few minutes, but I think it's important to say that in Brazil we have a similar process because the left wing do not understand how they lost, so they are not able to make an opposition.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to them to really understand who their enemy is. But I would like to talk a little bit about Rabin. So a very important part of the documentary, at least for me, is when you show the anti-Rabin acts. And in those moments, Bibi is encouraging people to plead for Rabin's death. And some days later, he was actually assassinated. Do you think we can say that Bibi's attitude collaborated to raise the violent rage against Rabin, or this is a little complicated?
It's a really difficult question. I don't think. Well, first of all, it has to be said that Bibi did not benefit from this murder at all. Because people from the left they like saying that he. We have a saying in Hebrew, "Ratzachta v'gam yarashta." You murdered and then you inherited. You took the inheritance. I think this is definitely not true because Bibi was ahead in the polls before the murder, and actually the murder took him way back. And actually, if it wasn't Shimon Peres handling the election afterwards, Bibi would have lost. So this was definitely not something that he wanted or benefited from directly. The thing was, and I think mainly what it did was legitimate in a way that this was a big political debate. there was a lot of things to argue about. It was a true drama in Israel at the time, so it was legitimate to lead the campaign against the Oslo Accords because it was a controversial thing. The thing with Netanyahu is until today not so much what he says, but what he doesn't say. So when we look at the big demonstration a few days before the murder, where emotions were high and people were shouting "Death to Rabin," and there was the SS photo, etc. Some of the Likud leaders who were at the place, they saw what was going on down there, and they left the scene. They didn't want to be part of it, and Bibi stayed. So he's asking, and some of his supporters are saying, why didn't you show the part where he's saying on stage that Rabin is not a traitor? Because he also said that. And I'm saying, because he stayed there, because it's not just about what he said, it's about what he didn't say.
And not only stayed, he was just in the same place as a big sign where it was written like Rabin's a traitor. So the image is really strong. He can say it, but he's not. This is not the message he's passing to people.
Yeah, he was part of it. But again, I think we should be in that. I mean, there's a lot of things that I can say wholeheartedly against him, and that he's doing bad things, and he is flirting with violence constantly. I mean, this leads us to the current elections as well, and his partners in these elections. But I think the Rabin story it's really complicated. I mean, it's not a simple thing of him like causing this murder. There's a lot of reasons for it. And again, the political debate was legitimate at the time.
Mm-hmm. And from everything you learned in this documentary, doing everything, what do you think is the difference between Bibi in the first term and before, when he got into power and still there since?
What's the difference between the first term and today?
Yeah, what changed in him in this process?
Many things. I think the first thing, and that's why I wanted to make the documentary in a chronological order and not not edited, because you could edit it by thematic scenes, like go back and forth in time. I wanted to see the change. I wanted to show him as a young man in Israeli TV with this smile, charismatic, a bit shy sometimes, someone that is more human and relatable, until today, where everything is blocked and everything is calculated and everything is cynical. And you know, it's the classical Shakespearean story. What happens to you with power when you stay so many years in power with so much power? You must get corrupted, and I think it's definitely happened to him. I think he's convinced now that he's the only one who can lead Israel, and that all the means are kosher for him to remain in power. I mean, it's hard to imagine now things that are not okay to do for Bibi to remain in power. I think not only in his first term, when he came back to power in 2009, when you look at his first government, so it was also always important for him to bring Ehud Barak and Tzipi Livni and Yair Lapid and all these people. Like it was always important for him to be more centrist. And the changing point was 2015, where he won the election by himself, and then Trump was elected, and then everything went.
And about the elections that you are about to leave, all Israelis are about to leave, the fourth in a row. Do you think this election will be different, or do you think we can expect Bibi in the power for some years to come?
I'm afraid most chances are that he's gonna stay in power. perhaps stronger than he is now. This is something that is it's pretty crazy, pretty amazing. Because when we released the film for the first time, we thought we were lucky to be in an election season. We said, like, we were working on the film, we didn't know that there were going to be an election, and then when the film was out, a few months later, they said there was going to be an election. We said, okay, now it's our time to promote the film, and everybody's going to talk about the film. And it's the first time now that I'm having these talks, trying to predict what's gonna happen. And it's yeah, he's so good at what he's doing, and he's so good at just dismantling the opposition. What he did to Gantz and Kachol Lavan. It's another, like, it's hard to say genius about things that are so disgusting in a way, but it is. He sees a few steps ahead and gets his results. People, the central left are not able to create a real alternative. So I think a lot of right-wing people are fed up with Netanyahu, but they don't see another option. They don't see anyone they can trust, or they don't even see anyone who comes and says in a clear and proud way, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. This is what I want to do. Everything became this circus of images and trying to please the people, and in this you don't have competition for Netanyahu, and he has this strange things with luck. Always something happens that prevents him from losing power. So it was Corona a year ago. Now it's the vaccines that, I mean, you have to give him credit for this, for the vaccines. So right now what's going on in Israel, a few days before the election, everything is open. Life is back to normal. So I think people will attribute this to Netanyahu, and he will. I think he will come on strong, but you never know.
The last time Bibi lost an election was to Ehud Barak of the Labour Party. What happened to the left wing in all these years that they are not able to win an election, to defeat Bibi?
Bibi also left. You also lost in 2006 to Ariel Sharon. But yeah, the last time we lost to a leader from the left was 99. The main thing that happened was the second Intifada, and what happened, the violent events from 2001 to 2005. This was a very traumatic thing for Israelis that made people lose hope regarding peace. The left, on the same time, all he had was the Oslo Accords. There was no other principles. There was no other ideas that could make people relate to them. And there still aren't. There's this, I guess in Brazil, maybe it's similar. There's a certain dissonance that the leftist people are the people who are enjoying the neoliberal economics. They are enjoying what Bibi brings to Israel. They are making money, they have a comfortable life, and they have a lot to lose at the end of the day. So we don't really understand, or we didn't find a way to communicate with the people who are who have their own interests, and so I think I think the main thing was the Palestinian issue, because it was all about that, and then people realized that there isn't going to be the solution that that Rabin maybe thought for a minute that there will be. So that was the biggest disillusion that people are still recovering from it. Personally, on that note, I think that when you look at it today, I think part of it is the idea that the Oslo Accords were very instrumental. The way of thinking was we need to be separated from the Palestinians for our personal benefit. It was never a moral issue. It was never, or almost never, saying we cannot apply this brutal military force on a daily basis on millions of people because it's not right. So maybe this is the next stage that the left will actually speak in a clear voice about how we want Israel to look like and what is right and what is wrong in basic human nature. Hopefully this day will come.
And Adrian is reminding us of something really important. What about Netanyahu's trials? He is accused of corruption. This is not important to people who vote for him?
This is another thing. It's another area where he controls the narrative, and he's been working very hard for a few years now to tell people that these accusations are false, that he's not really guilty, that this is just the establishment prosecuting him again just for being successful. And this narrative is slowly prevailing. So people some of them feel uncomfortable about voting for a prime minister with 3 indictments, but a lot of them are being convinced that what is done is not so bad, which is true in a way. I mean, I mean, it's not true because it's bad, but it's not like they're talking about bribe, but there was no envelopes with money. The cases are a bit difficult to understand in public view. When you read the indictment, you understand, like I did, say, okay, this is bad. But it's like borderline. It's not like you have the video of Bibi taking money to his pockets. It's about regulation. It's about newspaper articles. It's about his obsession with the media. Again. This is the thing. I mean, this is it's going back to that.
And my impression is that he knows how to turn this around by doing other stuff that people can use as arguments to say that no, but he's good, like the vaccine. He's accused of corruption, but he's giving Israel like vaccines, and we're going out of the coronavirus crisis. So I will still vote for him. So the arguments of people who still want to vote for him are maybe stronger for them than the corruption. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. I'm just saying, if the corruption would have been something more clear, like saying if you would have like he stole money, then you could see it. So maybe people will say, some people would still say, I don't care. Like it's like the guy in the movie who says, we need a motherfucker prime minister, son of a bitch, who knows how to lie. So I think a lot of people see him like this, and they don't care so much if he took some money or some benefits for himself. But it's a fascinating story because he's next month he has to be in court 3 times a week. But it's mainly, for me, it's mainly 2 things. One thing is the core of these corruption cases is about the media, and it's about it's the same narrative, because if it wasn't about his obsession with the media, these things wouldn't happen. I mean, this is
in the documentary, I think this is really clear, because one of the most important things that happened in his story is one supporter, a very rich one, creates a newspaper to support him.
Yeah. This is and the thing is that Netanyahu is still holding to the narrative that the media is against him. although he controls the media now, like from almost every aspect of it. Not officially, but de facto, he does control, but he still pushes the narrative that they are against us and they are attacking us, and because he benefits from it, from this narrative.
And Luis Eduardo Fonseca wants to know, what do you think about Bibi's supporters? So who are they? And like there's a kind of supporter, or there are supporters of Bibi in all parts of Israeli society?
In all parts. I think he's part of his success is his ability to communicate with different fractions of the society, and in Israel is a very fractioned society. There's so many different kinds of people, and he somehow found a way to talk to both Orthodox who believe in the Messiah, secular people who likes to eat non-kosher food like him, who are totally atheists, who don't believe in God, and the settlers and the Mizrahi from the periphery. He combines all kinds of people, and he manages to create this fluid message. And in this way, I think he's more of a postmodern leader who can create different realities at the same time for different people. And when you look at it rationally, you say, this doesn't work together. This is a contradiction, but no, he makes it stick. So it's hard to speak about a certain kind of people. I think at the end, his success is a lot of his success comes from a certain stability that it brings to Israel, a certain for Israeli Jews, yeah, not for everyone. So it's hard to talk about like a homogeneous kind of supporters. He manages to communicate with different kind of people. But I think a big, there's all kinds.
And I think that this kind of leader, they have a very strong difficulty, that is to choose someone to inherit their power.
Yeah.
And Fagner is asking, would Likud still be an important player on the Israeli politics nowadays without Bibi? And I would like to add, does Bibi has someone that someday will inherit his power? Maybe, I don't know, his son, Yair?
I think this is the biggest tragedy here, because when you have such a leader that is so many years in power and is so much and so much of this power is revolving about him personally, you have and what we see in front of our eyes is the institutions, the state's institutes crumbling. Like he's dismantling all the institutes that were supposed to be effective regardless of the leader. Because I'm old enough to remember back in the days, in the 80s and in the 90s, a prime minister wouldn't be such a big deal. I mean, you had like big leaders, you have the Rabbi, but it was someone who's being replaced every few years. It's not like it's not like, we're going back to the first question, it's not a king. So I think one of the biggest dangers with Netanyahu, and I think you saw it, maybe it's an extreme example, but let's say in Venezuela or other places, and what happens, even if let's say that his supporters are right and he's the greatest leader in the world, how will things look when he's done? I think it's a big problem. The question about his son Yair, maybe. I used to think, no way. I used to think that there's no chance because he's not as capable as his father. But he has he's a smart guy, and he has the talents of the new era. Like, he understands how politics work today. He knows how to create this toxic conversation that will bring him more followers and more attraction. So maybe this will be he will inherit him. I don't know. I don't see him going anywhere anyway. Like this.
I still have so many questions, but we're coming to 1 hour of interview, so I'll make just 2 questions. The first one, it's how do you like you in your documentary? I'll go to the questions about the US, like to go to an election made Bibi stronger. Was Trump's administration Bibi's political peak? And do you think something important will change with Biden's administration?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the Trump administration was everything Bibi could dream about. This was not just a theoretical thing. This was like the personal, like you see in the one of the last scenes in the documentary where Jared Kushner, he was a little child. Bibi and Sarah would stay at Jared Kushner's father's house, and he would contribute to Bibi's campaign. And this is exactly where Netanyahu came from as a young politician. These are the people that he befriended in the US. This is the network that he created for himself. And these were the people who really admired him as a young man. Who said, this is the guy we want in power, this is the guy we want to stick to. And the relationship with Trump had more layers because they have these similarities, I think, in their approach to power. And I think Netanyahu influenced Trump, at least regarding to foreign policy in the Middle East, but also Trump influenced Netanyahu and like gave him permission to lose any inhibitions regarding his populist methods. So it was kind of quite a crazy romance that we're still seeing the consequences. Biden, of course, will try and change things. I don't know. I mean, when you look at the Iran deal, for instance, there might not be a way back. I mean, I don't think. I mean, they stopped something. It's hard to say now whether it was good or bad. It's hard to say if this thing was helpful in creating a more peaceful environment in the Middle East. But these things sometimes very hard to change. So they created a reality, and now we have to deal with it. And again, we're in the Middle East, so it's not just up to us or up to the US. You have like, I mean, actually, Trump's policy in the Middle East is the one thing that you say maybe it wasn't far worse than Obama, because it's Americans in the Middle East. It's always trouble. It's been like this for
no
many
matter
years.
if they are Democrats or Republican.
Yeah,
and
somehow, yeah.
It's really problematic. And I started this interview asking about monarchy, and I would like to end it talking about democracy. So after all this time, do you think Bibi damaged Israeli democracy in some way?
Yes, definitely. We're now 2 days from really the crucial elections where, yes, like I said, democracy is about many things, but it's about institutions. It's about people finding ways to represent themselves and to let their voice being heard. And these institutions are being totally ruined. You have young people who never knew any other prime minister, and you hear them saying, "Yeah, Bibi I trust Bibi. I don't want anyone else to be in power." Like they never knew anything else. And I think Israel will remain to some extent a democracy. Democracy mainly for Jews, but this is not about Bibi. This is something that was before Bibi as well. I think what is happening now, democracy is about the separation of the institutions, and it's about the people who are choosing, and it's about minorities' rights. And the way the mainstream of the right wing see it, and Bibi supporters as well, it's mainly about the decision of the majority. And this is, I think, for them, it's the main thing about democracy. And this is where it's going, that if we're the majority, if we decided something, you have to accept it no matter what. So it will remain a democracy, but it's a flawed democracy. And this is already happening. It's already happening. And again, we're going back to the media, which is at the focus of our story, because you cannot have a democracy without a powerful and independent media. And we're losing the last strongholds now.
Then I would love to stay another hour, maybe 2 hours talking to you, because this theme is really important. And I think what I love the most in your documentary is your ability to show things. I agree, it's impossible to do something unbiased, but we have to take a step back and understand things before just criticizing them. And I think this was the most important thing in your documentary. It was wonderful to talk to you. I would really like to thank you in the name of Instituto Brasil-Israel, IBI, and in the name of Comunidade Shalom. It was a great opportunity to be here with you. And if someone got here in the middle of our conversation, in the end of our conversation, the video, it will be in IBI's channel on YouTube in Portuguese and in English. Then thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Anita. It was fascinating. Thank you for your questions and your host, and thank you, Adrian, again, and everyone. Chag Sameach, happy Passover. I hope we have a good holiday and a good year. And take care of yourself with all the Corona things. I hope things get better in Brazil soon.
I hope too. Chag Sameach. Are you ready, vaccinated then?
Yes, we're. Everybody who wants it gets it here. Thanks to Bibi. There's a saying, Bibi vaccinated me. No, he supports us like he did it himself. But yeah, we're good. We're going back to life. I hope it will remain this way.
Thanks a lot. I hope everyone can go back to normal life at some point. Bye, everyone. Thanks for your audience.
Thank you.